Hello and welcome to another episode of Eye on Baltimore. I'm John Carrington, and sometimes when you watch Baltimore, you can't watch the present. You have to go back to the past. And I remember as a child growing up in South Baltimore watching the infancy days of television and seeing shows like The Port That Built the City, Arthur Watson and those crazy animals from the Baltimore Zoo.
And Arthur Watson really had the crazy animals.
Yes, he did.
I remember the monkey that made paintings with his tail.
And there were so many great shows on, but the one I really remember the most is Helen Delich Bentley and her Port That Built the City. And I was just fascinated with all the things that were going on at the waterfront in Baltimore. And it's my pleasure to finally capture Helen Delich Bentley, who is the wonderful, wonderful producer, writer, host, advertising person, the creator of the Port That Built the City.
I was a jack of all trades on that show. Mm-hmm. I really produced it and sold it and that for 15 years. And you know, John, it was really an education, total education for me in an entirely different field than what I was doing, just covering the waterfront for the Baltimore Sun. Here I was getting into factories. We had a myriad of I did over 800 documentaries of industries throughout the state of Maryland that were tied into the port. Did we know about them before? No, but we sure learned.
Mm-hmm. And now our whole city tourism industry is built around that inner harbor.
Inner harbor is it for tourism, you're right. Mm-hmm. And our real shipping, the overseas shipping, is down at the other end of the harbor.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that shipping business helps to fund the engine that makes Baltimore and Maryland vital to our nation.
It's an economic engine. I always say that. Mm-hmm. And it always has been an economic engine. From the time that the first port of entry became an official port of entry in 1706. We even had shipping and some before that. But the official port of entry was established in 1706 when Humphreys Creek, which is down where Sparrows Point is today, and the point, I forget the point that where Locust Point is today, mm-hmm. but the two of them were melded together. They were merged. That was almost 24 years before Baltimore became a city. Mm. That's why I had the name, the Port That Built a City.
And there were tiny little ports along the way. I remember Port Covington, which is near Westport.
That was a segment of the port.
Okay. And then, of course,
Locust
Point.
Sparrows Point.
Okay.
The Canton area.
Right.
And the Canton area was named by a steamship captain who used to sail between Baltimore and China.
Ah.
And he sailed into Canton, China. Mm-hmm. And so he named that part of the port, mm-hmm. of the harbor, or whatever you want to call it, right. as Canton.
Oh, my goodness. And, of course, in Western Maryland, we produce coal.
After the coal is exported, much of it is exported,
That came down to the harbor.
comes down and goes out.
Oh my.
And today, with all the changes in pollution and that in the air, right now, exports of coal are going down.
And that hurts jobs in West Virginia. Cause
Hurts jobs everywhere.
oh my goodness. What do you predict for the future?
What future are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about the port. We're losing
I think
our
the
ability
port-
to ship coal out.
Well, I think the ports of the whole U.S. are going to survive. They're going to be a little different. There's a thing coming on now. It's called 3D 3D shipping.
So you've seen all this development in Baltimore and in Maryland. What have you learned that can help future generations?
I have learned that we need to look at history so that we know what was good in the past and what can be built upon. We can't totally ignore it. There has to be some reason that those things were made that way and now we're making them this way. And can we make them here better than they can make them overseas?
Mm-hmm.
Cost is a big factor. But now they're beginning to look back at manufacturing in the United States because of, number one, the wages in some of the foreign countries, in China in particular, are going up.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at the growing cost of shipping on the high seas.
Mm-hmm.
That is going up. And they're beginning to think a little bit about, we need to give Americans jobs.
Yes.
And I think that's very important.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping that we get enough manufacturing back here
Mm-hmm.
that we will be able to get our unemployment down to where it normally is around 3%. It bothers me that, and it bothers many, our young people, back in the days when we had Bethlehem Steel going here, I would like to bet that the generations, 30 or 40% of the young people who lived in Baltimore, especially the males,
Mm-hmm.
in the summertime, worked down at Sparrows Point
That's right.
to earn the revenue that they needed for college
Right.
and to learn how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a tremendous employment center
Mm-hmm.
and a tremendous benefit to the whole area. And it's been very sad to me that America's steel industry, almost everywhere, is disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
God pity us if we ever get into a war, because we will not be able to produce. Do you know, in World War II, 609 ocean-going ships were built here in Baltimore in
That's right.
that 4-year period.
That's right.
609, that's tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
That was more than any other seaport,
Mm-hmm.
what we did here. They were Liberty ships, they were Victory ships, and they were T2 tankers. And we did tremendous amount of repair work at the Key Highway Shipyard and at Maryland Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company. We employed, in the steel industry alone, we employed over 50,000 people.
Wow.
Those days. In the airplane industry, and Martin's had located here then
That's right.
because of the steel industry. There were 50,000 there. And in the shipping, the shipbuilding and repair industry, you had another 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Those were jobs, and good paying jobs. Things are different, as I said earlier, but we need to think about how we can have people working here. I had in my office at one time a statement up on the framed. I buy American so others can also buy. What that
Beautiful.
says is,
Beautiful.
I'm buying American so I can keep Americans working so they can buy. And people need to understand that.
So Helen, what do you see for the future?
Well, you know, there's something special in the air right now that I have to stop and ask myself, is this really going to happen? And it's called 3D printing.
Oh.
And I learned about this at a meeting of the Baltimore Council of Foreign Affairs. And one of the gentlemen there was an executive with Maersk Shipping Line. And I was so impressed, I had him come in and meet with the executive director of the Port of Baltimore. Because what it is, they say, I can send a photograph or an image, or however they do it by technology, from China to the U.S., not send the product,
Mm-hmm.
but then the product will be produced in the U.S.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
that is a challenge, but it's very real. The Wall Street Journal has had several articles on that in the last 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
I've been intrigued by them as I've read them. And if that happens, as the container ship changed the world
Mm-hmm.
in production and revolutionized the whole world of shipping, 3D printing could again revolutionize the whole shipping industry. And what'll be hit the hardest, in my opinion, strictly, will be the container ships.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones that carry the manufactured goods. Raw materials will still have to be transported, etc. So you're going to have bulk shipping. But I'm wondering, I hope I'm here when 3D printing really becomes active. Just see what a tremendous world the change has brought. I mean, when I started around the Baltimore waterfront, we had 6,500 ships a year come in here. And they were the Liberties and the Victories and the 20,000 tonners and that. Today we have 2,000 some. But one of those ships carries the equivalent of about 5 or 6 Liberty ships.
Okay.
Or more. I mean, a coal ship goes out of here when it loads up, it goes out of here with anywhere from 60,000 to 100,000 tons of coal. It's a lot of coal in one ship. And that's the way it's changed. So if 3D printing gets going,
Oh my.
God knows what's going to happen. And I want you and me to be here to see it.
I want to
John.
see it too. Matter of fact, what was your favorite segment of Port that built the city?
Well, let me see. I probably enjoyed the live shows. We did our first live show, actually the first live show that WMAR did was on a ship that had been battered in a ferocious storm on the high seas, the Steel Ore. And it limped back to Baltimore, made it here safely, and they were able to discharge the cargo. We did a live shot. The whole show was live from that ship.
Wow.
And that was an exciting time because it was really innovative then.
Well, on that note of excitement, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more of Helen Delich Bentley talking about maybe her congressional career. We'll see. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
The port that built a city.
Going to all the towns immediately in this area, as well as going out to the entire state of Maryland, as we pointed out recently. All of these towns in this area have industries that involve importing and exporting over on into the eastern shore.
Well, Helen, it's a great pleasure being able to repeat this history of the Port of Baltimore.
Welcome back to Eye on Baltimore. I'm John Carrington, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Helen Delich Bentley. And we're sitting at a desk that has congressional history written all over it. Congresswoman, can you tell me about this desk?
I'll tell you about the desk. This desk belonged to my predecessor, Clarence Long, and I inherited it from him, and then I bought it from the Congress when I went out of office. But I got into Congress because of the Port of Baltimore, really. My issue, the issue was dredging in the harbor. My predecessor didn't want dredging. He didn't want the channel deepened. And so I took him on. It took me 3 tries before I defeated him, but I did it. And you know what? If I hadn't gotten that 50-foot channel authorized back in 1986, the Port of Baltimore would not have a 50-foot channel today. Because the cost today and the environmental concerns today would not allow 150 miles up the bay to be deepened to 50 feet. We're now trying to widen it a little bit more. That's a struggle. But at least we are considered one of 2 ports on the East Coast that has the 50-foot channel.
Wow.
And that's why I fought. And so when I left the Congress, I bought this and a couple of bookcases.
Wow, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
But this is not easy to handle, my friend. And Clarence enjoyed this a great deal, as did I.
Well, as we look towards the future, we have to take a real look at how the past has affected the future. You helped invent some techniques that are used in television.
Well, I referred to the first live show on the steel oar. That was remote television. And that we really did. I really had a great team at WMAR. We were all novices. I was the biggest novice. These guys had been into it at least 1 or 2 years when I got in. You know, television began in Baltimore when? 1947, 48?
47, yeah.
And I was into it in 1950.
Wow.
And so it really was a training period for all of us. But I think my team, Charlie Purcell, Eddie Eisenmeyer, Irv Kemp, that whole group were so wonderful, and we all worked hard. We worked hard. And we'd look out, there's fog out there, oh, we can't shoot today. And Eddie would call up and he'd say, come on, let's go. And we'd go. And we'd go. It was a great experience. They were a wonderful team.
And you met so many icons in local television. Stu Kerr.
Stu Kerr was on there. Stu practiced. Stu rehearsed when I was cutting film. And he would always come in and needle us a little bit. And there were many others.
Oh, yes.
Sylvia
Scott with the
Sylvia
woman's
Scott
angle.
was one. Brian, Mrs. Davis was a pianist and a musician who worked for WMAR and WBAL different times. Now, well, we interchanged a lot then. The stations were all kind of close together because there were few people in it.
Right.
And we had to kind of, if somebody was out here, you didn't shut the door on them. Could you help them? Yes, you helped them. And we did.
What is it that we as voters need to know as we move ourselves into improving our city and our state?
We need to know whether those who are running for office are sincere in wanting to help, or are they only looking for advantages for themselves? And if it's the latter, forget them. If it's people who are truly interested in working in behalf of people, the little guy, go for him. Because that person will do, all of his votes or her votes will be to benefit the country, the community, the state.
What has been the highlight of your career in politics?
Oh, goodness, in politics, I guess I was known as one of the meanest persons around. I didn't let go. You know why the Navy still has as many ships as it does today?
No, I don't.
Well, there was a part of the Navy when I was chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission that was going to be transferred into the Army. And John Warner was then Secretary of the Navy. He wouldn't touch it. Admiral Elmo Zumwalt was Chief of Naval Operations. He wouldn't touch it. The staff of the Military Sea Transportation Service came to me. And they said, will you help us? Nobody wants it. We don't want to go in the Army. I said, sure, I'll help. So, how do I do this? The White House has signed off on this.
Okay.
The White House has signed off on this.
Okay.
So I go up to the Hill, and I see a couple of congressmen who I knew, had known, because I've been covering the Hill for the Sun. And I said, here's the story. I'm coming up to do a regular review of my agency. Why don't you ask me about whether this should happen? And so they did, and I said, no, it shouldn't happen, it's wrong. Those ships belong in the Navy. So they asked me, then they said, well, will you come up and testify with the Armed Services Committee? In the meantime, the White House found out what I was doing.
Oh.
And they raised holy hell and said, you can't go contrary to what we have said. And if you have any more statements that you're going to prepare on the Hill, we want to see them 2 days beforehand.
Ooh.
So, how am I going to appear before the House Armed Services Committee? I locked myself in a hotel room for 3 days and memorized the whole thing. I did not have a statement. I had nothing to send to the White House. And we won. The Armed Services Committee voted 15-0 to keep the military. It was then the Military Sea Transportation Service. Now it's the Military Sea Lift Command. To keep that in the Navy, where it belongs.
Wow.
And Warner and Zumwalt didn't have the guts to fight.
Wow. Thank goodness. We're going to take a break on that note. We'll be right back with more of Eye on Baltimore with Helen Delich Bentley.
The world-renowned University of Maryland has broken ground on a state-of-the-art biopark that puts the West Side on the global map as a major biotechnology hub. The Stewart's Building, once a thriving department store, is the very definition of an environmental-friendly green building. And don't let the facade fool you. This office and retail space is wired with the most high-tech, broadband infrastructure technology imaginable. And a luxury apartment building known as the Atrium at Market Center even has a direct connection to the university's main network. There are so many ongoing projects like Market Center West residential units, University of Maryland housing, plus an important redevelopment of an area called the Superblock, where local small business owners have been invited to partner with public and private entities to upgrade their properties. Everyone is playing a role in the renaissance of the West Side.
Welcome back to Eye on Baltimore. I'm John Carrington, and I have the pleasure of meeting and greeting and speaking with Helen Delich Bentley, Congresswoman, one of a handful who were in the Congress at that time.
You know, in Maryland at that time we had 4 women.
4 women.
And now we have none.
Oh my.
There are no
Oh, my.
women in the congressional delegation
Oh my.
in Maryland.
But-
in Maryland.
But when you were there, you made
Well,
an impact.
I shouldn't say that. I was thinking of the House of
Right,
Representatives.
right. But Barbara Mikulski's in the Senate. Yeah,
Mikulski
yeah,
is our great senator.
Yes, yes.
Number third most important person in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee.
Longevity and tenacity.
And tenacity, and she's done a great job.
All right.
She's done a great
And but you did some things that were really great in the area of promoting bills that would help the little guys,
Yeah.
the people.
Well, mine were mostly oriented towards the maritime world, because that was my expertise. And at that time, it was the maritime world that was providing a lot of jobs for Americans.
There you go.
And it's just kind of been allowed to dwindle away. And it's very sad when we have so few ships flying, the stars and stripes out there on the high seas. It's very sad. And it should not have been. And I can tell you, I'd have fought like hell if I was still there for them.
Well, what advice do you have for low information voters?
Low information voters. They actually, I'm on a board at the Maritime Industries Academy, and this is a high school in an unfortunate section of Baltimore.
Okay.
And what we were trying to do with these youngsters is acquainting them with the port and the opportunities for their future with that port. Now, to my surprise, these kids are in high school, and many of them had no idea that there's a port out there, that their opportunities are there for them. And we are working, Congressman Cummings
Elijah Cummings.
and I are working close together on this. And he's been really a stalwart. He attends every board meeting. He is there. He knows what's going on because he thinks it's so important that these youngsters have these have the opportunities are there and that they know about them and that they want to do them. And we're raising funds for them to go on field trips and that.
Good.
But that is what is important. We need to keep our people informed and help them to become informed.
That's right. Just don't let those jobs disappear and then think, oh, we forgot about Sparrow's Point. We forgot about Domino Sugar. We forgot about...
Yeah, they want to get rid of Domino Sugar.
So much of our economics and our future depends upon taking advantage of the waterways that are right next. The Atlantic Ocean is right next door to Maryland. Why waste the opportunity to exploit that to everybody's benefit?
Yeah.
Closing thoughts.
My closing thoughts are, I love that your show, that you're thinking about Baltimore so much, John, and you remember how you grew up and the impressions that it made on you.
Yes.
And that's what we want with the youngsters coming along now, that they have that same feeling that you have for Baltimore and to help.
We have that same feeling for you. Like I said, you're one of my childhood memories from early television. 3 channels, folks. Channel 2, Channel 11, and Channel 13. And I remember the port that built the city. Host, producer, person who got the advertising dollars in, the person who sat in the cutting room and cut the edit the film, that person, Helen Delich Bentley.
Had a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Well, I want to thank you for being a part of Eye on Baltimore. And this is John Carrington saying goodbye, but keep your eye on Baltimore.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.